All right, so today we're going to be starting on our new unit today. It's going to be on what's called binomial distribution. Really fancy name. It's actually not too bad. The first lesson is going to be dealing with a bunch of stuff that you've already heard before, as you can tell at the very top. The lesson is called Measures of Center and Variation. So let's start off with some definitions. At the very top, you have measures of center. The definition for measures of center . The definition for measures of center is a value that attempts to describe a set of data, the long one, by identifying the central position of data. All right, it's a long one. So, measures of the center. Basically, what this long definition is trying to tell you is that whenever you are trying to solve for one of the measures of center, you are trying to find a value that tries to describe a set of data. So most commonly, whenever you do the three things that we discussed in our bell ringer, you're trying to find the middle points of a set of numbers. Whenever you're trying to solve for these, you're trying to find as close to a center for that data as you can. That's why they call it a measure of center. It tries to identify the central position of data. So in the real world, whenever you're working for some kind of firm or you're doing an experiment, you're going to figure out a whole bunch of data. And a lot of times in data, it's going to create things that look like this. Does anybody know what this is called? You would have learned it back in Algebra 1 and 2. What is this called? It's called a bell curve. A lot of times in the real world, data is represented by a bell curve. The measures of center is your ability to try and find the centermost point of that data. That's the goal of it. Everything else around it, all the data around it, has some type of relationship to it. Now, back in Algebra 1 and 2, there are certain formulas that help you solve for this, but in the real world, the graphs aren't going to be perfect like what you're used to in Algebra 1 and 2. So this is your goal. Whenever you are trying to solve for the mean, median, and mode, you're trying to solve for the center of a data set. So here's the first one. Like I said, there's three of them. The first one is the mean. And Larry, can you tell me what you called the mean earlier? It's called the average. So most often people, whenever they think of the mean, they're talking about the average of the data set. You solve this by adding up the total of all the numbers and then by dividing it by the number of the numbers you have in that data set. So I call it the number of objects. So for example, if we have a small set of, we're actually going to use this like little data set here that I'm going to draw to the side to like show you examples of how to solve for. So let's say you have a data set. It's 2, 4, 5, and 6. Only 4 numbers. It's a very small data set. The way that you would solve for the mean would be to add up the total of all the numbers. So you would add up 2, 4, 5, and 6. It'd give you 2 and 4 would give you 6. Plus 5 will get you 11. Plus 6 will give you 17. Once you add up the totals, you just divide by the number of numbers in the data set. So how many numbers are there? 4. So just divide by 4, and that'll tell you what it is. So someone with a calculator, tell me what you get. What is it? 4.25. This is how you solve for the mean. So mean is the average. It's one of the two more important of the measures of center. There's 3 of them. 2 of them are really important and more accurate. This is probably the most accurate one. The second one is the median. The median, like Skylar told me earlier, is the middle number. The job of the median is to try and get as close to the middle of the numbers as possible. Now, there are two ways to solve this. If you have an odd amount of numbers in a data set, all you have to do is pick that middle number. So an example of this would be if I were to have 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7, it's an odd amount of numbers. There's 5 of them. All you have to do is pick the middle one. So 5 would be your median. If you have an even amount of numbers, like we do in this first one, you take the 2 that are in the middle. Since there's 4, the 2 that are in the middle would be the 4 and the 5. So here's how you solve it if you have an even amount of numbers. You have an even amount of numbers, you add 4 and 5 together, and you'll get 9. After you get that, you divide it by the number 2. And if you divide 9 by 2, you get 4.5. So that's how you can solve for the median. There's 2 ways. Either look for the middle number, and if there's 2 of them, add them together and divide by 2. The last one is the easiest one to solve for, but it is also the most inaccurate when we're talking about measures of center. It's the one that's probably the one that people use the least. Mode, most people think of it as the number that occurs the most in a data set. So again, here's your data set. If you have 2, 2, 4, 5, and 6, which number occurs the most in that data set? 2. That's your mode. Since it occurs more than any other numbers, that's the answer for the mode. Now, there are 2 other instances with mode. Sometimes you can have more than one mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another number to it. At the very end of it, I add another 6. So now it's 2, 2, 4, 5, 6, 6. You actually have 2 numbers in this data set that occur twice, that occur more than all the other ones. You can actually have more than one mode. You can actually have 2 and you can have 6. So it's also the only one of the 3 that can have multiple answers. And then there's a third, more unique answer. If you have a set of data like 2, 4, 5, and 6, you actually don't have a number that occurs any more than any other number in the data set. So this is an example of a data set that has no mode. It's the most interesting of the 3 because it can have one answer, can have 2 answers or more, or it can have no answers. So that's how you solve for the 3. Also, I'm going to go back to mean real quick. Mean is the one of the 3 that actually has a really unique letter. Now, I actually talked to my first class, and they told me that there were several questions on the most recent ACT where they actually saw this symbol a lot and didn't know what it meant. So here it is. It's one long line and then a U that's attached to the top of it. This is the symbol for mean. So whenever you actually go through this worksheet, whenever you go through the notes, you'll actually see that symbol a lot. That symbol is just another fancy way of saying mean. Sadly, I didn't teach it to y'all right before the ACT, but in case you're taking it in the summer, you'll get the opportunity to see it. So what I want y'all to do now is I want y'all to go to number 1 and 2, and I want y'all to be able to do this on your own. There is one key to doing median though. Whenever you're doing the median, the best thing to do is to take all the numbers in that data set and rearrange them from smallest to largest. Don't just add the numbers in the middle as they are. Try to order it from smallest number to largest number. If you don't, the median will be a little